Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast, where we answer your sales distress calls. I'm your host, Liz Hyman, bringing the rescue boat to your sales challenges. In this ever-changing sales environment, it's easy for leaders to feel adrift. We're here to be the beacon guiding you to success. Each episode, I'm joined by top sales experts and practitioners who have navigated this waters and come out victorious. Together, we'll uncover the insights and strategies that will help you hit your sales targets and grow your business. So if you're ready to turn your sales distress into sales success, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. Hi, and welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, your host, and your crew, Daryl Prell, Renee Bigelow, Chris Bowen, and Bryn Tillman are here to talk to you about making a new year that's really fantastic. We want 2025 to be a great year. And one of the things that we are seeing is that as the sales landscape changes, as the world changes and technology changes, the culture that we've had may not be the culture that's going to carry us forward. So, you guys, what is the sales culture we need to create in 2025? What are the things we need to bring forward that worked before? And what are the things that we're going to need to do differently? To make our sales organization effective in 2025. Go, Bryn.
So I'm going to start, and this is not necessarily a priority, like one priority over the other, but I think something that we have to start looking at is allowing our sales reps to be heard and treat them more entrepreneurial than we ever did before. And that comes from this next generation coming up. So and post-COVID, where we had our own hours and we had our own time and we work remotely and we're not in the office as much, and those things have changed. So I think our culture, even though our culture may be you could be at home, I think the culture you have to extend is empowerment and creating like an entrepreneurial team where they have to treat it and feel like it's their own business and it's not just a job, because if it's just a job, they're always looking for another
one. Yeah, empowerment. So you're not talking just about, give them the freedom to figure out their own hours. You're talking about empowering them to own their territory, empowering them to grow it and benefit from the growth of their territory, to really feel like they're acknowledged and respected for the things that they're doing. I love that. What else do we need to do, guys? How does sales culture need to change or maybe go backward?
The number one bullet I wrote down here, and this is a thing I think I seem to talk about year after year after year, but I don't know, it's gotten bad this last year, I think. Lose the tech bro, sales bro mentality culture. That's just got to go. Like, it's pissing off a lot, excuse the language, just pissing off a lot of people. All right. You're not the center of the universe. Your buddy isn't as smart as you think they are. The guy who says they're making millions on their investments, and the CEO who made it big, but just got what happened to be the right place at the right time. Just let it all go. All right. It's just terrible. It's divisive, and it makes you look like a moron, and you're going to fail. I have an opinion on this one. Sorry.
No, Daryl, I think this is really important. And I think we've talked about this before, because on TikTok, on, Facebook and Instagram, there are young bros who are teaching this kind of really negative, manipulative, coercive selling techniques, and it's being absorbed. Your sales reps are watching this and saying, this is going to work. And if you look at the comments, because I'm intrigued by this, you see a lot of older people saying, this is stupid. Don't do this. This is bad. And the young people are going, this is so cool. I can't wait to try it, because they haven't been around it long enough. So you have to drive the culture of your company. If you want your sales team being manipulative, disrespectful, all of those things, that's the culture you're choosing. But if you don't, you're going to have to develop a culture that discourages that kind of behavior. What else have we got?
I was just talking with a client about this just this morning before our podcast. I think I work with a lot of, I'll preface this by saying I work with a lot of technology or technical companies. And inside all of those companies, but I think this is pretty applicable to broader industries as well. There is a lot of change right now, particularly amongst the products and services that we're selling. And people who've been with a company for a while have an identity around they're really good at understanding this, right? Or that they are insert industry sale. They're, this industry, and maybe the technology is moving into this industry now, or the products are going to change. The customers are somewhat changing. The way you offer services or the exact services are changing. And I think that culturally, we have to make sure that our people who are selling see their identity for what we are becoming or are, not what we were. And that is a really hard thing to do. And I think when I was just talking about this with a client and making sure that they see all the things that like led up. Most of these changes aren't drastic, right? They're like slivers that build over time. And now it's, something else. Seeing that throughput, like how we got there so that they see they were a part of getting there, and making sure that we're eating our own dog food. So if we're adding features to our technology, that we are doing the same thing internally so that they feel it and live it. Like, you made a joke in our last podcast about Slack. Like, if you aren't using Slack inside your company, then, you're not going to be able to do messaging features in software, or, like if you aren't doing something in that world where they live it, understand it, breathe it, and it's part of their identity. I think that's really important, is to make sure that the team, in particular, I think marketing as well, and the sales team, because they're out in front, right? Like once we get a bunch of clients on these things or whatever these new changes are, everybody feels it. But sales and marketing are kind of out there in front, the first people with this change. They have to feel a part of whatever that identity is. And that's on us.
And I can tell you that the many years that I was doing sales training with big companies like Hewlett Packard and, NCR and those sales reps during that time when I was working with them and changes were happening. Like I can remember a conversation about my clients just want to plug their printer into their computer. Why are we trying to sell them this wireless thing? They don't want it. Right. So you can't just make the changes without helping your sales reps come along and your customers come along in your story, just because you see the vision and they don't see it yet. They
So often we start like pushing out the vision to the customers, and internally we haven't told it internally.
I want to build on what Renee's saying and Liz is talking about there. Talk about culture. Something I don't see done often enough is the whole concept. And by the way, and I've seen it done wrong, so this is buyer beware. But the whole idea of sales squads. In other words, product management goes and introduces features often in an isolation. They'll say they've talked to the customer, but when you ask them, they've never talked to marketing, they never talked to sales. They went and did something on their own. Marketing goes and they'll do something in isolation, pick their shows, do their, pay-per-click, whatever it is they're doing. And sales will say, well, they got it all wrong. The message is wrong. I talked to sales. What I've seen from marketing sucks. And then sales does their own thing. And then product management and marketing goes, what the hell are they doing? That's not at all what that feature is. I mean, it's a dog's breakfast. Sales squads is the whole idea of saying we're going to get product management and marketing and sales and maybe even RevOps all together in a squad. And we're going to meet weekly and we're going to review the pipeline. We're going to listen to sales calls together. And then we're going to work. Because all of a sudden, what sales starts to realize is that, hey, because we're collaborating on these actual deals together, marketing says, we could do this campaign or this campaign that'll help you. And the sales will go, I never thought of that. And product management will hear something that's coming up on a sales call and they'll go, I can do that. I can get that on the next rev and you can get this big deal. That's a culture where everybody now is revenue focused as opposed to who's got the biggest ego and who's the most visible within the corporation.
Yeah, all in silos, fighting each other instead of in teams working together. And so much finger pointing. If we can create a culture where there's no more finger pointing, there's no more fires that are somebody else's fault, but there's collaboration, toward goals. I think that would be a huge benefit to most companies. Chris, what about you?
I would say a broad base across your organization of just basic business acumen, to understand what the different functions do, why it's important, why what we're doing impacts our customers, where it impacts those customers, and letting them understand, like, no, you're not just a Java developer, or you're not just a QA person, or you're not just this. This is how you contribute to the overall business. Not everybody's going to go much deeper than maybe, that mile wide, inch deep sort of understanding, but you'll have some people that may find different areas of interest, and they're able to have better conversations with your customers and internally that are going to make your product better. It's going to make the organization better, because people will begin to see how they fit within the overall mix, not just that they're just this cog in the machine.
And I think with a sales team, helping them understand that just getting the deal is not always the best thing. Just getting the deal because we dropped the price so much that we're not going to make a profit. Just getting the deal because we promised something that's going to cause our engineering team to spend a tremendous amount of time. Just getting the deal, but the customer's not going to be happy, and the payout in the end is going to be an unhappy customer that we're going to have to fix things with, right? When you have a sales culture that is just about driving revenue, without this, what Daryl's talking about is how do we work together he's talking about being revenue focused, but it's really customer focused as well. We end up with a sales team that is not furthering the company strategy. And so people always say to me, company leaders say, why do we need a strategy? Why do we need a mission, vision, values? Why do we need that stuff? It's just stuff we're going to put on the shelf. Nobody cares. But if your sales team doesn't understand where you're going, who your ideal customer is, what you're trying to achieve, they can't be part of it. All they can do is cherry pick the best deals in their mind that get them the most money without being rewarded for moving the company toward its strategic goals.
If you aren't clear on that purpose and mission values, your marketing is going to be really schizophrenic. Too. I mean, I know you're saying from the sales perspective, but
absolutely,
like, what are you trying to communicate? That's literally telling marketing and sales and product and anybody in operations, here's what we're trying to communicate to our customers, and this is what we need to. These are the promises that we need to keep, right? Like those aren't things that go on a shelf. They're things you need to live.
Yeah. Well, when you see leadership sometimes change the focus of the company, quarterly or something like that. Oh, this is the hot new thing, or we're going to chase after this. And it's like that whipsaw effect impacts all the teams across your organization and destroys the confidence that leadership is actually driving in the right direction. Right. So it's really, really important for you to have something that resembles a North Star. Right.
Yeah, I love that. And I think this just pulls up in my head Barbara Weaver Smith's book, The Whale Hunters. So if you haven't read it, it's the story of the Inuit, the tribe, the people. And as a people, as a community, they're working toward one goal, which is they have to get one whale that will feed them and clothe them and everything they need for a whole year. But they all work together. They all have a job. They're all a cog in the wheel, but they're all working as a team. So there are people that build the boat. There are people that get the food, that make the spears, right? And then there are the people that capture the whale, and the people that cut up the whale, so the whole entire community is working together for the sake of the entire community. And I think that this conversation leads me to, a lot of what Chris talked about of, where do you fit in and how important is your role? The person that chops down the trees that makes the boat that gets the whale is really, really important. But all they know is they chop down the tree. So I think when and going back to Chris's point and kind of bringing it together, when you know how important your job, no matter how small it may seem to you, how critical it is to the whole picture, you come back to you own it, right? This is you have impact, and you create loyalty, and you create pride in a good way, like a good and so I think I recommend her book to everyone, but just the concept I think is just plays really nicely here.
Can I add another cultural thing, Liz?
Mhm.
No.
I have one that has been a focus for the past few years, but this year I'm determined to really double down on it. And Bryn, I'm going to tee you up here. I think you're going to like this one. But in a world where we need to be far more buyer driven than sales driven, and that transformation is still happening in many companies, we also are very used to controlling conversations when they come to us when we're sales driven versus driving conversation into the buyer's world. And when we are focused on them coming to us, we have, and I'm going to borrow this phrase from one of a team members at a former client that I helped bring on. And he refers to people who are social turtles, right? Meaning they kind of keep their head in their shell until something friendly comes along instead of getting out and driving the conversation in the community, right? And when we talk about the buyer's pyramid, we know that the earlier someone discovers your brand, right, and engages with your brand, the more likely they will purchase from you when they get ready to purchase, right? This is what we're talking about being buyer driven versus waiting on them to come to us. And for that, we need our teams to be out there helping drive the conversation. And they need to be participating in conversations and not waiting on some ads, not waiting on leads to come to them, like really talking about what the problems are and what are some ways to solve things. And that involves getting out on social. And in this instance, with a B2B company, we're going to say that's probably going to be LinkedIn, right? There are other places you can be. I told you I was teeing you up, Bryn. So culturally, I think we have to get people really comfortable with driving and leading conversations in public, not just one-on-one. And we have to really help them feel good about putting themselves out there. So I've done like employee advocacy training for a while, but I feel like it really, like, this is a place I'm doubling down because I think it is the number one roadblock to moving to being more buyer driven and getting more success in the new kind of sales world. And I will tee it over to Bryn now, but that is an area I think culturally we need to do a lot better. And leaders do have to live that so that they have a pattern, right, to go off of there. The turtles follow along on a pattern, right? Like they need a pattern maker.
So I love that. And I do think the relationship building is the one major differentiator that's still out there in the marketplace. Stuff, I mean, like the competitive, what's your value proposition? I mean, I was in a meeting today and I said, I put out it's a kind of meeting where you have an ask and a give. And my ask was, I need a really, really good collaborative tool where I can org chart the buyer's journey. And there were like 27 different suggestions, and there were only 23 people in the meeting, right? So what is the difference? Well, I went on, I asked, like, I got a free trial. One, I think I reached out to maybe 4 or 5. Only one of them has responded to set up a time to show it to me. And I'll just give a shout out. It's Lucid Chart. Might as well, if they're doing a good job.
They are a good company.
So good.
And we would love to have Lucid Chart as a sponsor.
Oh, well, there you go. But I will say, like, they were awesome. I mean, there's A lot of them are like, well, how many employees do you have? One of them was 2 to 150. So what that tells me is I'm going to get no service unless I have 151 employees. So I don't even remember the question. But so all the tools, I do remember. It's Squirrel. All the tools in the world, they all are equal in some way. Maybe Miro is better at one thing and Lucidchart is better at another thing. But at the end of the day, it's the relationship. It's how you made me feel. Lucidchart doesn't care that we're 7 people. They're still willing to give me a 15-minute demo. That's all. That's what yeah.
So that takes me to another place, which is, I think, in a 2025 world, in a post-COVID, in a almost still pre-AI, we're not really there, or the beginning of AI. Proactivity, being proactive instead of reactive, is one of those things that we need to build into our cultures. It doesn't help to get leads that no one follows up on. It doesn't help to wait around for people to call and to cross your fingers and hope somebody's actually going to pick up the phone and call. It doesn't help to sit around and hope that the problem that you think is going to happen doesn't happen. We have to become proactive. And what I'm seeing in the organizations that I work with, the ones that are struggling are not proactive, or they haven't been proactive. And they're now learning to be proactive. And it seems to be one of the things I hear so much is they don't have the words for it, but they know that everybody's kind of waiting around for deals to come in. And anyway, I think maybe that's the big cultural change for 2025 that we need to really look at. Any last thoughts before we wrap up and move on to goal setting?
Liz, I agree 100%. That proactivity, just being more socially engaged is just part of that, right? Like if you start conversations, if you contribute to conversations, is a way of being proactive, right? Like you just kind of put an umbrella on several of the things that we talked about.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. I hope these things that we've talked about will give you some ideas about how you want to change your culture in your company and in your sales organization to make for a really great 2025. And that's a wrap of this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. A huge thank you to our experts for throwing us a lifeline with their insights. We hope today's episode has equipped you to navigate the sales seas with confidence. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to the Sales SOS podcast on your favorite platform. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to explore, join us live on LinkedIn every second Friday, or share your questions on YouTube or LinkedIn. Until next time, keep sailing towards those sales goals. I'm Liz Hyman, your captain here at the Sales SOS podcast, saying smooth sailing and successful selling.